My name is Racheal Frank. I am 78 years old. People who meet me today think I am just a quiet old woman with silver hair, slow steps, and gentle eyes. They see a grandmother who bakes pies, waters flowers, and smiles at children in the neighborhood. But they do not know what happened to me. They do not know the night my life cracked open forever. I was born in a small town in Missouri, where the air smelled of cornfields and old wooden houses. I grew up believing in God, in family, and in love that lasts until the end of time. When I married Racheal Frank at 21, I thought my story would be simple. Love, children, church on Sundays, quiet evenings, growing old together. And for many years it was exactly that. Harold was a retired railway worker, gentle in his voice, careful with his words. When we moved into a quiet suburban community after retirement, I thought God had finally rewarded us with peace. But peace can be fragile, and faith can sometimes be used as a weapon. Now listen closely, because what I am about to tell you is not just a story. It is the moment everything changed. Before I continue, let me ask you something. If you enjoy deep emotional stories like this, take a second to subscribe to this channel, like this video, and turn on the notification button so you never miss a powerful story. And please tell me in the comments where you are watching from. I want to know who is here with me. Now let me take you back to that night. It was a cold autumn evening. The kind of night where the wind whispered through the trees like it carried secrets. Our church had announced a special prayer service. Pastor Daniel Crowley had said it was for families who wanted blessings in their later years. Harold and I went early, holding hands like we always did. The church hall was dimly lit, with soft hymns playing in the background. The smell of old wood and candle wax filled the air. Pastor Crowley was a respected man, tall, calm, and charming. People said he had a gift from God. When he spoke, people listened. When he prayed, people cried. That night, he called us to the front after the service ended. "Racheal, Harold," he said softly, smiling in a way that felt too gentle. "God has shown me something about your family. There is a special prayer that must be done in private." Harold squeezed my hand. Private prayer did not sound strange to us. But then the pastor turned to my husband and said something that made my heart skip. "Harold, I need you to step outside for a moment. This prayer is only for Racheal." The words hung in the air. I looked at Harold. He looked at me. For a moment he hesitated. I could see it in his eyes. But faith had always guided him more than doubt. "If the pastor says it is from God," Harold said gently, "I will wait outside." He kissed my forehead and walked toward the church door. I watched his back disappear into the dark hallway. The door closed. And suddenly the church felt very quiet. Too quiet. Pastor Crowley turned slowly toward me. His smile faded. "Racheal," he said, stepping closer, "there are things your husband does not need to hear." I felt a strange chill crawl up my spine. I wanted to call Harold back. I wanted to walk out. But my feet would not move. The pastor closed the distance between us. And in that moment I realized something was terribly wrong. He lowered his voice and said words I will never forget. "Tonight your faith will be tested." My heart began to pound so loudly I thought the walls could hear it. I opened my mouth to speak, but no words came out. And just as he reached out his hand toward me, the church lights flickered. Outside, I heard Harold's voice faintly calling my name. "Racheal." I turned toward the door. But the pastor stepped in front of me, blocking my way. And that was the moment I knew my life would never be the same again. If you want to know what happened next, stay with me. Like this video, share your thoughts in the comments, and make sure you are subscribed. Because what happened after that night will shock you. I stood there, frozen, with my hands trembling and my heart beating like a drum in my chest. The church that once felt warm now felt cold. The wooden benches looked taller. The walls looked closer. The air felt heavy, like it was pressing down on my shoulders. Pastor Crowley was standing between me and the door. His voice was calm, but there was something in his eyes I had never seen before. "Racheal," he said softly, "do not be afraid. God sometimes chooses special people for special moments." I swallowed hard. I had heard pastors talk like that before. but never when I was alone. Never when my husband had been sent away. I tried to step to the side, but he moved too, blocking my path again. "Why did you ask my husband to leave?" I asked. My voice sounded smaller than I felt inside. He smiled again, but it did not reach his eyes. "Some prayers are too deep for others to hear," he said. "Some truths are not meant for every ear." My hands began to shake more. For a moment I thought about Harold outside. He trusted this man. He trusted the church. He trusted God. And I trusted him. But something inside me whispered that I should not trust this moment. Pastor Crowley walked toward the altar and picked up a small Bible. He opened it slowly, like he was taking his time on purpose. "Racheal," he said, "I have watched you for many years." I felt my stomach tighten. "You are a strong woman," he continued. "A woman who carried pain quietly. A woman who prayed even when life was unfair." I did not answer. I did not know what to say. He stepped closer again. "God revealed something to me about your life," he said. "Something your husband does not know." My breath caught in my throat. "What do you mean?" I whispered. He leaned forward slightly. "Your marriage has a hidden wound, Racheal. A wound that began many years ago." His words hit me like stones. Memories rushed into my mind. Years of struggle. Years of silence. Years of prayers that seemed unanswered. Harold and I had never been able to have children. Doctors said it was complicated. People whispered behind our backs. Some women at church looked at me with pity. Some looked at me with quiet judgment. But Harold had always defended me. "She is my wife," he would say. "That is enough for me." I thought our pain was something only we carried. "So how did the pastor know?" My voice shook as I asked, "How do you know these things?" He smiled gently. "God reveals secrets to his servants, Racheal. And tonight he asked me to help you heal." I felt tears in my eyes. "Heal me how?" I asked. He closed the Bible slowly. "There are spiritual doors in your life that must be closed," he said. "And there are sacrifices that must be made." The word sacrifice made my chest tighten. "What kind of sacrifice?" I asked. He looked at me for a long moment. "Sometimes," he said quietly, "God asks us to do things that are difficult to understand." I felt fear creeping into my bones. Suddenly I heard footsteps outside the church door. Harold's voice again. "Racheal, are you okay?" My heart jumped with relief. I took a step toward the door, but the pastor raised his hand slightly. "Do not interrupt the prayer," he said firmly. "This is between you and God." I hesitated. I did not want to embarrass him. I did not want to look faithless. I did not want to doubt God. So I stayed. And that was the mistake that followed me for the rest of my life. The pastor walked behind me slowly. "Close your eyes, Racheal," he said. I felt his presence too close. I opened my mouth to speak, but my voice disappeared again. He began to pray in a low voice. His words sounded holy, but his tone felt different. As he prayed, memories began to flood my mind. I saw myself as a young bride, laughing in a white dress. I saw Harold carrying me across the threshold of our first home. I saw years of quiet dinners, shared dreams, and silent tears. I realized how much I had trusted the church. How much I had trusted men who spoke in God's name. Then suddenly the pastor stopped praying. The silence was louder than his words. "Open your eyes, Racheal," he said softly. He opened them slowly. He was standing so close that I could see the lines on his face. "Your healing begins tonight," he whispered. And in that moment, I felt a fear I had never felt in 78 years of living. Outside, Harold knocked on the door harder. "Racheal, open the door," he called. But before I could move, the pastor placed his hand on my arm. And everything inside me screamed that something terrible was about to happen. I tried to pull away, but he held on. And that was when I understood that this was not just a prayer anymore. This was something else. Something dark. Something that would change my life forever. And just as I was about to shout Harold's name, the pastor leaned close to my ear and whispered words that shattered my soul. "If you walk away now, your husband will pay the price." My heart stopped, and I knew I was trapped. My body went cold when he said those words. If you walk away now, your husband will pay the price. For a moment I thought I had heard him wrong. I wanted to believe my ears were lying to me. I wanted to believe this was still a prayer. But when I looked into his eyes, I saw something that had nothing to do with God. What do you mean? I whispered. His hand was still on my arm. Not tight enough to hurt, but firm enough to remind me that I was not free. Some battles are spiritual, Racheal, he said softly. And sometimes, one person must carry the burden so others can be spared. My heart began to race. Outside, Harold's voice grew louder. Pastor, is everything all right in there? He asked through the door. The pastor turned his head slightly toward the door. His voice changed instantly. Everything is fine, Harold. Please give us a few more minutes. His tone sounded kind again. Holy again. Then he turned back to me. And his face hardened. I felt like a lamb surrounded by wolves. Years of faith rose inside me. Years of obedience. Years of believing that church was always safe. But something inside me began to break. I pulled my arm slowly from his hand. I want my husband here, I said. For the first time, his smile disappeared completely. You do not understand, he said. If you call him in, you will destroy what God wants to fix in your life. Destroy. That word echoed in my mind. I thought of Harold's tired eyes, his gentle hands, his quiet loyalty to me. He had defended me against gossip. He had protected me from cruel words. He had loved me when I felt useless. I could not bear the thought of anything happening to him because of me. The pastor stepped back a little and raised his hands as if he was praying again. Close your eyes, Racheal, he said. Trust God. I felt tears rolling down my cheeks. I did not close my eyes. Instead, I looked around the church. The wooden cross on the wall. The old piano in the corner. The empty chairs where people had been sitting just minutes ago. Everything looked the same. But I felt like I was standing in a different world. He began to speak again, his voice low and slow. You have carried shame for many years, Racheal, he said. Shame because you could not give your husband children. Shame because people looked at you differently. His words pierced my heart. How do you know how I feel? I asked. He smiled faintly. 'Cause I watch people, he said. And God shows me what they hide. Felt exposed. He stepped closer again. Tonight, he said, God wants to remove that shame from you. But the process is painful. Painful how? I asked. He looked at me for a long moment without answering. Outside, Harold knocked again. Racheal, please answer me, he said. My lips trembled. I wanted to scream his name. I wanted to run to the door. But the pastor spoke quickly. If you shout now, he said, your husband will lose his peace. He will doubt God. He will doubt you. And your marriage will never be the same again. His words felt like chains around my soul. I had spent my whole life protecting my marriage. Protecting my husband. Protecting our fragile happiness. And now I was being asked to protect it again. But at what cost? My hands shook as I clasped them together. I whispered, God, please help me. The pastor heard my whisper. He nodded slowly. That is good, Racheal, he said. Surrender. That word made me feel smaller than I had ever felt before. He asked me to sit on one of the front chairs. I obeyed without thinking. My legs felt weak. He stood in front of me, holding the Bible like a shield. Repeat after me, he said. I looked at him. What should I say? I asked. He gave me words that sounded like prayer. I repeated them slowly. But inside, my heart was screaming. With every sentence, I felt like I was losing something I could never get back. Suddenly, he stopped speaking again. The silence returned. He looked down at me and said quietly, You have to prove your faith tonight. My stomach dropped. Prove my faith how? I asked. He leaned closer and lowered his voice so that only I could hear him. There are things that must happen in secret, Racheal, he said. Things that must never be spoken of. If you tell anyone, your husband will suffer the consequences. I felt like the world was spinning. I wanted to stand up. I wanted to run. But fear held me down. Outside, Harold's footsteps moved away slowly. Maybe he thought the prayer was almost over. Maybe he trusted that everything was fine. And in that moment, I realized something that broke my heart more than anything else. I was alone. Completely alone. The pastor straightened his back and said words that changed everything. "Tonight, Racheal," he said, "you will learn the true meaning of sacrifice." My eyes filled with tears. And as he reached toward me again, I felt my soul shaking. I knew that whatever happened next would follow me for the rest of my life. And just as I was about to cry out, the church door creaked slightly. I turned my head. For a split second, I thought I saw Harold's shadow on the other side. Hope rose in my chest. But the door did not open. And the pastor whispered something that made my blood run cold. "He is not coming back, Racheal." I realized then that I was standing at the edge of something I could not escape. And I had no idea how far I was about to fall. When he said he is not coming back, Racheal, something inside me shattered. For years I had believed that faith was always safe. That church was always holy. That pastors were always guided by God. But in that moment I realized something painful. Not everyone who speaks about God speaks for God. My hands trembled as I slowly stood up from the chair. "I want to go home," I said. My voice was quiet, but there was a new strength in it. The pastor looked at me carefully, as if he was studying my face for signs of rebellion. "You cannot leave yet," he said calmly. "The prayer is not finished." I looked at the door again. The hallway outside was dark. Silent. I felt a sudden wave of anger rise inside me. "Why did you send my husband away?" I asked again, this time louder. He sighed slowly, as if he was tired of explaining himself. "Because Harold loves you too much," he said. "And love sometimes makes people blind to spiritual truth." His words made my chest burn. "Blind to truth," I repeated. "Yes," he said. "If he stayed, he would interrupt what God wants to do in your life." I felt tears fall down my cheeks, but I did not wipe them away. I thought of Harold waiting outside like a loyal dog. Trusting this man. Trusting this church. Trusting me. And suddenly I felt something new. Not fear. Not shame. But clarity. I looked straight at the pastor and said something I had never dared to say to any religious leader in my life. "I do not feel God here," I said. The air in the church changed instantly. His eyes narrowed slightly. "Faith is not about feelings, Racheal," he said. "Maybe not," I replied. "But I know when something is wrong." For a moment he said nothing. Then he walked slowly toward the door and locked it. The sound of the lock clicking echoed in the silent church. My heart jumped. "Why did you lock the door?" I asked. "So we are not disturbed," he answered calmly. I took a step back. I felt trapped again. But this time, something inside me refused to stay silent. "I am calling my husband," I said. I opened my mouth to shout Harold's name. But before I could speak, the pastor raised his voice sharply. "If you call him," he said, "everything you have prayed for will be destroyed." His words felt like thunder. I stared at him. "Destroyed how?" I asked. He walked closer again, but this time I did not move back. "Sometimes," he said, "God allows storms in people's lives when they refuse to obey." Storms. I thought about our fragile peace. Our retirement savings. A quiet home. Our old age filled with routines and small joys. Was he threatening us? Or was he pretending to be God? My hands clenched into fists. "You are scaring me," I said. He nodded slowly. "Fear is sometimes the beginning of wisdom," he replied. Those words made me feel sick. I looked at the cross on the wall again. Jesus never used fear to control people. So why was this man doing it? For the first time in my life, I began to doubt everything I had believed. The pastor stepped back and softened his voice again. "Racheal," he said gently, "I am trying to protect you." "Protect me from what?" I asked. He paused for a moment. "From the truth," he said quietly. My heart skipped a beat. "What truth?" I whispered. He looked at me with a strange expression, like he was about to reveal something dangerous. "There are things about your marriage you do not know," he said. My chest tightened. "What things?" I asked. He hesitated, then spoke slowly. Harold has secrets, Racheal. Secrets he never told you. His words hit me like a knife. I shook my head. That is not true, I said. Harold would never hide anything from me. The pastor smiled faintly. Everyone hides something, Racheal, he said. Even the people we love the most. I felt confusion and fear mixing inside me. Was he lying to manipulate me? Or was he revealing something real? I remembered moments from the past. Times Harold came home late. Times he avoided certain questions. Times he looked distant, lost in thought. I had always ignored those moments. Now they returned like ghosts. The pastor stepped closer again and whispered, "If you want to know the truth about your husband, you must stay." My heart raced. I felt torn between love and doubt. Between trust and suspicion. Between faith and fear. Outside, the wind howled louder. The church windows shook slightly. It felt like the world itself was reacting to my confusion. I looked at the locked door again. I thought of Harold standing somewhere outside, unaware of the storm inside my heart. Then I looked back at the pastor, and I realized that he was not just testing my faith anymore. He was playing with my marriage. He was planting seeds of doubt in my soul. And before I could stop myself, I asked the question that changed everything. What secrets does my husband have? The pastor looked at me for a long time. Then he leaned closer and said something that made my knees weak. "Racheal," he whispered, "your husband has been lying to you for years." My world stopped. I felt like the ground under my feet was disappearing. And just when I thought my heart could not take any more, he added something even worse. He said, "And tonight you are going to find out everything." In that moment, I knew that my life was about to split into two parts. The life I thought I had, and the life I was about to discover. When he said my husband had been lying to me for years, I felt like the air had been pulled out of my lungs. For a long moment I could not speak. I could not breathe properly. I could not even think. Harold lying to me. That idea felt impossible. He was the man who woke up every morning to make tea for me when my knees hurt. The man who held my hand when doctors told us we might never have children. The man who defended me when people whispered behind my back. If Harold had secrets, then what had my whole life been built on? "You are lying," I said finally. My voice sounded weak, but my heart was screaming. The pastor shook his head slowly. "I wish I was lying, Racheal," he said. "But God does not lie." I felt anger rise in me. "Do not use God to speak lies," I said. For the first time, his face showed irritation. "Be careful with your words," he said. "Doubt is dangerous." "Dangerous for who?" I asked. He did not answer. Instead, he walked toward the altar and picked up a small folder from behind it. I watched him closely. "What is that?" I asked. He turned slowly, holding the folder in his hand. "Evidence," he said. My heart jumped. "Evidence of what?" I asked. He opened the folder and pulled out a few papers. "These are documents," he said. "Things your husband never told you about." Felt dizzy. "Show me," I said. He hesitated for a moment, then walked toward me and held the papers in front of my eyes. I looked at them, but my hands were shaking too much to read clearly. I saw numbers. Some of them looked familiar. Some of them did not. "What is this?" I whispered. He pointed at one page. "This is a bank account," he said. "An account your husband opened without your knowledge." My chest tightened. Harold never told me about any secret account. "Why would he do that?" I asked. The pastor looked at me quietly. "Maybe because he did not trust you with the truth," he said. Those words hurt more than any slap could have. I felt tears roll down my cheeks. "Harold trusted me with everything," I said. "Are you sure, Racheal?" he asked softly. His voice was gentle now, but his words were cruel. I remembered moments from our past. Times Harold avoided talking about money. Times he insisted on handling certain bills alone. Times he said, "Do not worry about it, I will take care of it." I had always thought it was love. Now it felt like secrecy. The pastor pulled out another paper. "And this," he said, "is even more painful." My hands trembled as I looked at it. I saw a name. A woman's name. Not mine. My heart stopped. Who is that? I asked. He looked at me slowly. Someone your husband has been helping for many years, he said. Helping how? I asked. He did not answer immediately. Instead, he let the silence grow. That silence felt louder than words. I imagined terrible things. Another woman. Another life. Another secret family. My head began to spin. This is not true, I said. Harold would never betray me. The pastor sighed softly. Racheal, he said, love sometimes blinds us. I felt my knees weaken. I held onto the chair beside me so I would not fall. Why are you telling me this? I asked. He looked at me with a serious expression. Because the truth must come out, he said. And because your healing cannot begin until you face reality. Healing. That word sounded strange now. Felt like he was not healing me. It felt like he was tearing me apart. Outside, I suddenly heard footsteps again. Harold's footsteps. My heart jumped. Harold, I called softly. The pastor quickly folded the papers and put them back into the folder. Do not call him yet, he said. Why not? I asked. Because if he hears this from me, he said, he will deny everything. He will call me a liar. He will turn you against the truth. My mind felt confused. Who was lying? Who was telling the truth? I felt trapped between two men I had trusted in different ways. Harold knocked on the door again. Racheal, he said, are you okay? My lips trembled. I wanted to answer him. I wanted to run to him. But the pastor spoke quickly. If you want to know everything, he whispered, you must stay silent for a few more minutes. I looked at the door. Then I looked at the pastor. My heart felt like it was breaking in two. I whispered, Harold, I am fine. The words tasted like poison in my mouth. Outside, Harold's footsteps slowly moved away again. The pastor looked at me with a strange expression, almost like victory. You see, he said quietly, you are stronger than you think. I did not feel strong. Felt lost. Then he leaned closer and said something that made my blood freeze. And this is only the beginning, Racheal. There is something even worse your husband has never told you. My eyes widened. Worse than this? I asked. He nodded slowly. Yes, he said. Something that will change the way you see your entire life. My heart began to race again. I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff. And the pastor was about to push me. He opened the folder again and pointed to one last paper. Look carefully, Racheal, he said. I leaned forward, my hands shaking. And when I saw what was written there, I felt my soul leave my body. Because the name on that paper was not just any name. It was a name that connected Harold to a secret I had never imagined. A secret that was about to destroy everything I thought I knew. And in that moment, I realized that the night was far from over. The worst truth had not even been spoken yet. My eyes stayed on the paper as if it were burning my soul. For a moment I could not understand what I was seeing. The letters looked familiar, but my mind refused to accept them. Then it became clear. The name on the paper was not a stranger's name. It was the name of someone I knew. Someone I had trusted. Someone who had sat at my dining table and laughed with me. It was the name of my niece, Alina. My heart stopped. I felt a sharp pain in my chest, like something heavy had fallen on my heart. No, I whispered. This is not possible. The pastor watched my face closely. You recognize the name, he said quietly. I nodded slowly, my lips trembling. She is my sister's daughter, I said. She is like a child to us. He sighed softly, as if he was carrying a burden too heavy to bear. Racheal, he said, sometimes the truth hides in the places we trust the most. My hands began to shake violently. What does her name have to do with Harold? I asked. The pastor looked down at the paper again. According to these documents, he said, your husband has been sending money to her for years. Felt dizzy. Sending money, I repeated. Why would he do that? He hesitated for a moment, then spoke slowly. Because she is not just your niece, Racheal, he said. My heart skipped a beat. What do you mean? I asked. He lifted his eyes and looked straight into mine. She is also connected to him in a way you never imagined, he said. My chest felt tight. Say it clearly, I whispered. He paused, letting the silence stretch like a knife. Then he said the words that shattered my world. She is his child. For a moment I thought I was going to die. The church disappeared around me. The walls faded. The cross on the wall vanished. All I could see was that paper and the name written on it. His child. I felt like the ground had opened under my feet. That is a lie, I cried. Harold cannot have a child. We tried for years. We prayed. Doctors told us it was impossible. The pastor looked at me with a calm expression that felt cruel. Impossible does not always mean impossible, Racheal, he said. Sometimes it only means hidden. I shook my head violently. No, I said. Harold would never betray me like that. He would never touch my sister. He would never create a secret child. My voice broke as I spoke. He would never do that to me. The pastor walked slowly toward me and placed the folder on the chair beside me. Read it again, he said. Look at the dates. Look at the signatures. My hands trembled as I looked again. I saw dates that matched Alina's birth year. I saw numbers that looked like monthly transfers. I saw Harold's handwriting on one of the forms. My heart felt like it was being crushed. But even then, part of me refused to believe it. This could be fake, I said. Anyone can create papers like this. The pastor nodded slowly. You are right, he said. Papers can lie. People can lie. Then why are you showing me this, I asked. Because the truth is not only on paper, he said. My heart jumped. What do you mean, I asked. He looked toward the church door for a moment, then back at me. Your husband is outside, he said. I nodded slowly. Yes, I said. If you want to know the truth, he continued, you can ask him yourself. My breath caught in my throat. Ask him, I repeated. Yes, he said. Call him in. Let him explain. For a moment, I felt hope rise in my chest. If Harold heard these lies, he would deny them. He would laugh. He would hug me. He would prove that everything the pastor said was false. I stood up slowly and walked toward the door. My legs felt weak, but I forced myself to move. I placed my hand on the door handle. Just as I was about to open it, the pastor spoke again. But remember, Racheal, he said softly. Once the truth is spoken, nothing will ever be the same again. My hand froze on the handle. I thought about our quiet home, our morning tea, our evenings watching old movies, our peaceful life built on trust. Was I ready to destroy it? I swallowed hard and opened the door. The hallway outside was dimly lit. Harold was standing there, leaning against the wall. His face looked tired. His eyes were full of concern. Racheal, he said softly. Are you all right? When I saw him, my heart almost broke in two. This was the man I had loved for more than 50 years. The man who had held my hand through sickness and poverty. The man who had promised never to lie to me. I stepped closer to him. Harold, I said slowly. Yes, my love, he answered. I looked into his eyes and asked the question that had been burning in my soul. Harold, I said, do you have a child with my niece Alina? For a moment the world stopped. Harold's face turned pale. His eyes widened slightly. His lips opened, but no words came out. The silence that followed was louder than any scream. And in that silence, I felt my last piece of hope begin to crumble. The silence between us felt like a wall made of stone. Harold stood there, his mouth slightly open, his eyes fixed on my face. He did not laugh. He did not deny it immediately. He did not look surprised. And that was when my heart truly began to break. Racheal, he whispered, his voice trembling. Say it, I said quietly. He looked away from me for the first time in years. Say it clearly, Harold, I repeated. His hands began to shake. Where did you hear that? He asked. I felt tears rise in my eyes. So it is true, I said. He swallowed hard. It is not what you think, he said. Those words hurt more than any confession. Not what I think, I repeated bitterly. Then tell me what it is. Behind me, I felt the pastor's presence. He stood near the altar, watching us like a judge in a courtroom. Harold glanced at him, then back at me. We should talk about this at home, he said softly. Home, I repeated. My voice rose without my permission. You sent money to my niece for years, Harold. You hid accounts from me. You kept secrets from your own wife. And you want to talk at home. His eyes filled with tears. Racheal, please, he said. I felt something inside me snap. Answer me, I said. Is Alina your child or not? He closed his eyes for a moment like he was gathering strength. When he opened them again, his voice was barely audible. The word hit me like thunder. For a moment I could not move. Could not breathe. Could not even cry. That single word destroyed 57 years of marriage. I took a step back as if someone had pushed me. The hallway spun around me. Harold rushed forward and held my arm. Racheal, please do not faint, he said. Do not touch me, I whispered. My voice sounded strange, like it did not belong to me. He slowly released my arm. I looked at him as if I was seeing him for the first time. You did this with my sister, I said slowly. He shook his head quickly. No, he said. It was not your sister. My heart twisted. Then who was it, I asked. He hesitated. It was years ago, he said. Before Alina was born. Say it clearly, Harold, I said. He lowered his head. It was your sister's best friend, he whispered. Felt sick. My sister's best friend. A woman who had visited our house many times. A woman who had hugged me and smiled at me. I laughed bitterly. So you betrayed me with someone from my own family circle, I said. He shook his head again. It was a mistake, he said. Terrible mistake. Mistake, I repeated. My voice began to shake with anger. A mistake that lasted a lifetime. A mistake that created a child. A mistake you hid from me for decades. He began to cry openly. I was afraid, Racheal, he said. I was afraid to lose you. Lose me, I repeated softly. You were afraid to lose me, so you lied to me for more than 30 years. He did not answer. Behind us, the pastor cleared his throat softly. Harold turned toward him suddenly. You had no right to tell her, he said angrily. The pastor's voice was calm. I had a duty to reveal the truth, he said. Harold clenched his fists. You manipulated her, Harold said. You scared her. The pastor looked at him quietly. And you deceived her, he replied. Their words echoed in the empty church. I felt like I was watching two strangers argue about my life. I raised my hand slowly. Stop, I said. Both men turned to look at me. For the first time that night I felt something new rise inside me. Not fear. Not confusion. Not shame. But strength. I looked at Harold and said quietly, How long have you known? He hesitated. Since the day she was born, he said. My heart clenched. So you watched her grow up, I said. Yes, he whispered. You attended her birthdays, I continued. You sat at my table while I cooked for her, I said. You looked at her as your child while looking at me as your wife, I said. He began to sob. I thought I was protecting you, he said. Protecting me from what, I asked. From pain, he replied. I laughed softly, but there was no joy in it. And now, I said, do you think I feel less pain? He could not answer. I looked at the pastor slowly. You knew all this, I said. He nodded. Yes, he said. How long have you known, I asked. For some time, he replied. My heart tightened again. So you watched me pray in your church, I said. You watched me cry for children I never had. You listened to me thank God for my husband's faithfulness. He lowered his eyes. Yes, he said quietly. I felt anger rise in me again. Then why did you not tell me before, I asked. He looked at me slowly and said something that shocked me. Because sometimes, Racheal, he said, the truth is more dangerous than lies. I stared at him. Dangerous for who, I asked. He did not answer. Outside, the wind howled again. The church felt colder than ever. I looked at Harold again. What about Alina, I asked. Does she know the truth? Harold hesitated. No, he said. She thinks I am just her uncle. I felt my chest tighten. So you lied to her too, I said. Yes, he whispered. Silence fell again. I looked at both men standing in front of me. One had lied to me for decades. The other had manipulated my faith to reveal the truth. And in that moment I realized something terrifying. My life had been built on secrets, but something inside me also awakened. A quiet voice that said, "Racheal, you are not weak anymore." I lifted my head slowly. "Harold," I said calmly. He looked at me with red eyes. "Yes, my love," he whispered. "Do not call me that again," I said. His face froze. For the first time in my life, I saw fear in his eyes. I took a deep breath and said words that would change everything. "Tomorrow," I said, "your secret will no longer be secret." Both Harold and the pastor stared at me in shock. "What do you mean?" Harold asked. I looked straight into his eyes and said quietly, "I am done protecting lies." And in that moment, I knew the real storm had not even begun yet. Because the truth I was about to reveal to the world would destroy more than just my marriage. It would expose a darkness that had been hiding in our church for years. And I was ready to bring it into the light. When I said I was done protecting lies, the room went silent. Harold looked at me as if he had never truly seen me before. The pastor's face became still, like a man who had just realized he had underestimated someone. For many years I had been quiet. For many years, I had swallowed pain instead of speaking it. For many years, I had believed that peace was more important than truth. But that night something inside me changed forever. "Racheal," Harold whispered, "please do not do anything you will regret." "Regret," I repeated slowly. My voice sounded calm, but inside me there was a storm. "Do you know what I regret, Harold?" I asked. He looked at me without answering. "I regret trusting you with my silence," I said. "I regret defending you when people questioned your honesty. I regret kneeling beside you in church and thanking God for a man who was living a double life." His shoulders dropped as if my words were heavier than stones. The pastor stepped forward slightly. "Racheal," he said gently, "you must be careful." "Careful," I repeated. I turned my eyes to him. "You locked the church door," I said. "You scared me with words about punishment and sacrifice. You used God's name to control my fear." He did not respond immediately. "So tell me, Pastor Crowley," I continued, "who should be careful here?" The air felt thick. Harold took a step closer to me. "Racheal," he said softly, "let us go home. We can talk calmly. We can fix this." "Fix this," I repeated. I looked at him slowly. "Tell me, Harold," I asked. "When exactly were you planning to tell me the truth?" He opened his mouth, but no words came out. I waited. Seconds passed. He looked down. "I was never going to tell you," he whispered. That was when I felt something inside me finally die. Not love. Love had died earlier. It was hope. I nodded slowly. "Thank you for your honesty," I said quietly. He looked up at me in shock. "What do you mean?" he asked. I turned away from him and looked at the pastor again. "You said you revealed the truth because of God," I said. He nodded slightly. "Yes," he said. "Then answer me honestly," I continued. "If God had not forced your conscience, would you have told me?" He hesitated. That hesitation was enough. I laughed softly, but there was no joy in it. "So both of you hid the truth," I said. "One as a husband, one as a pastor." Silence filled the church again. I walked slowly toward the front of the church. Each step felt heavy but also strangely light. For the first time in decades, I felt free from the burden of pretending. I turned around and faced them both. "You thought I was weak," I said. "You thought I would cry quietly and accept everything in silence." Harold shook his head quickly. "No, Racheal," he said. "Yes, you did," I replied. "You thought my age made me fragile. You thought my faith made me blind." I lifted my head. "But you forgot something important," I said. Both men looked at me. "I have survived 78 years of life," I continued. "I have buried parents. I have buried dreams. I have buried prayers that never came true." My voice became stronger. "And I am still standing." Harold's eyes filled with fear. "Racheal," he whispered. I raised my hand gently. "Do not interrupt me," I said. He stopped speaking. I looked at the pastor again. "You said the truth is dangerous," I said. He nodded slowly. "Yes," he said. I smiled faintly. "You are right," I said. Then I walked toward the door and unlocked it. The sound of the lock opening echoed in the silent church. I opened the door wide. Cold night air rushed inside. I stepped outside and breathed deeply, as if I was tasting freedom for the first time. Harold followed me slowly. "Racheal, where are you going?" he asked. I turned to him calmly. "Home," I said. He looked relieved for a moment. Then I added something that wiped the relief from his face. "But not to sleep," I said. He frowned slightly. "Then for what?" he asked. I looked straight into his eyes and said quietly, "To wake up the truth you tried to bury." He stared at me in shock. The pastor stepped outside behind us. "Racheal," he said, "you must think carefully." I turned toward him. "I have thought for decades," I said. "Tonight I am done thinking." I walked past both of them toward our car. Harold followed me slowly, his steps uncertain. On the drive home, neither of us spoke. The road looked longer than usual. The street lights looked colder. When we reached our house, I did not go to the bedroom. Instead, I walked straight to the living room and sat on the couch. Harold stood near the door, watching me nervously. "Racheal," he said softly, "what are you going to do?" I looked at him calmly. "Tomorrow," I said, "I'm going to see Alina." His face turned pale. "No," he said quickly. "Do not do that." "Why not?" I asked. He shook his head. "It will destroy her life," he said. I tilted my head slightly. "And what about my life, Harold?" I asked. He could not answer. I stood up slowly. "You spent decades protecting your secret," I said. "Now it is my turn to protect the truth." His lips trembled. "Please, Racheal," he whispered. I walked past him toward the stairs. For the first time in many years, I did not look back at him. Because I knew that the next morning would change everything. And somewhere deep inside me, a quiet voice whispered that the real battle had only just begun. Tomorrow the lies would meet the light. And not everyone would survive that light. I did not sleep that night. I lay on my bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the slow ticking of the clock in the hallway. Each second felt heavy. Each memory felt sharper. Harold did not come to bed. I heard him moving quietly in the living room, walking back and forth like a man trapped inside his own guilt. For the first time in my life, I felt no desire to comfort him. When the morning sun finally rose, I felt strangely calm. Pain was still there, but fear was gone. I got dressed slowly. I chose a simple blue dress, the one I usually wore to church. When I walked downstairs, Harold was sitting on the couch with his head in his hands. "Racheal," he said softly when he saw me. "Good morning, Harold," I replied calmly. He looked surprised by my tone. "You are really going?" he said. "Yes," I said. He stood up quickly. "Please," he said. "Think about Alina. She is young. She has dreams. She trusts you." I looked at him quietly. "And I trusted you," I said. He looked down again. We drove in silence to Alina's house. She lived in a quiet suburban neighborhood with white fences and tall trees. Her house looked warm and peaceful. I wondered how many secrets were hiding behind those peaceful walls. Harold parked the car but did not get out. "Racheal," he whispered, "this is the last chance to turn back." I opened the car door. "You had your chance for decades," I said. "Now it is mine." I walked toward the house alone. Each step felt like I was walking toward a storm. When I rang the doorbell, my heart beat faster. After a few seconds, the door opened. Alina stood there, smiling brightly. "Aunt Racheal," she said happily. What a surprise. Her voice was warm and innocent. I felt a sharp pain in my chest. "Hello, Alina," I said gently. She looked past me and saw Harold standing near the car. "Uncle Harold," she called out cheerfully. He raised his hand slowly but did not smile. "Come in," Alina said. We entered the house and sat in her living room. She brought us tea, chatting happily about her job and her plans for the future. I listened quietly, watching her face. She had Harold's eyes. The realization hit me again like a wave. After a few minutes, she noticed the tension in the room. "Is everything okay, Aunt Racheal?" she asked softly. I looked at Harold. He looked at the floor. I took a deep breath. "Alina," I said slowly, "there is something important we need to talk about." Her smile faded slightly. "What is it?" she asked. My hands trembled, but I forced myself to stay calm. You have always believed that Harold is your uncle, I said. She nodded. Yes, she said. I swallowed hard. But there is something you do not know, I continued. She looked confused. What do you mean, she asked. Harold suddenly raised his head. Racheal, he said urgently. I lifted my hand gently. Let me speak, I said. He stopped. I turned back to Alina. Your life has been built on a story that is not completely true, I said. Her eyes widened slightly. Aunt Racheal, you are scaring me, she said. I felt tears rise in my eyes. I know, I whispered. But the truth is sometimes frightening. She looked from me to Harold. Uncle Harold, what is she talking about, she asked. Harold's lips trembled. He could not answer. The silence grew heavy again. I took a deep breath and said the words that had been burning in my heart. Alina, I said softly. Harold is not just your uncle. She stared at me, confused. Then who is he, she asked. My voice shook as I spoke the final words. He is your father. For a moment the world stopped. Alina's smile disappeared. Her eyes widened. Her hands trembled slightly as the teacup slipped from her fingers and shattered on the floor. She stood up slowly, her face pale. No, she whispered. Harold stood up suddenly. Alina, he said softly. She stepped back as if he were a stranger. Do not call me that, she said, her voice shaking. Her eyes filled with tears. This is not true, she said. I felt tears roll down my cheeks. I wish it was not true, I said gently. She turned to Harold with anger and confusion in her eyes. Tell me she is lying, she said. Harold opened his mouth, but no words came out. He looked at her with eyes full of regret. Alina, he whispered. That was all she needed to hear. Her knees weakened. She sat down slowly on the couch, covering her mouth with her hand. Her whole body trembled. My entire life, she whispered. I sat beside her slowly. She looked at me with eyes full of pain. You knew, she asked. I shook my head. I found out last night, I said. She turned toward Harold again. You lied to me, she said. He nodded slowly. Yes, he whispered. She laughed bitterly. Everyone lied to me, she said. Her words pierced my heart. I reached for her hand gently. I'm sorry, I said. She did not pull away, but she did not hold my hand either. The room felt heavy with broken truths. After a long silence, she whispered something that shocked me. So my real mother is my mother's best friend, she said. Harold nodded slowly. Yes, he said. Her eyes filled with tears again. Does she know, she asked. Yes, he whispered. Does everyone know except me, she asked. Harold could not answer. I felt anger rise inside me again. Enough, I said quietly. Both of them looked at me. Alina, I said gently. I did not come here to destroy your life. She looked at me with red eyes. Then why did you come, she asked. I took a deep breath. Because living a lie is more destructive than facing the truth, I said. She looked down, her hands shaking. Silence filled the room again. Then she said something that made my heart ache even more. I do not know who I am anymore, she whispered. I looked at her and felt tears flow freely. Neither did I. And in that moment, I realized that the truth had not only destroyed my marriage. It had shattered an entire family. But the story was not over yet. Because the consequences of this truth were about to reach far beyond our home. And the person who would suffer the most was not Harold. It was someone none of us had expected. For a long time, none of us spoke. Alina sat on the couch with her hands on her knees, staring at the floor as if it might open and swallow her pain. Harold stood near the wall like a man who had already lost everything. And I sat between them, feeling older than I had ever felt in my life. The truth had finally been spoken. But truth does not always bring peace. Sometimes it brings fire. After a while, Alina stood up slowly. I need air, she said quietly. Her voice sounded distant, like she was speaking from another world. She walked toward the door and stepped outside without looking at either of us. Harold moved as if he wanted to follow her, but I raised my hand gently. Let her breathe, I said. He stopped. Silence filled the house again. Minutes passed. Then Harold turned toward me, his eyes full of tears. "Rachel," he said softly, "I never meant to hurt you." I looked at him calmly. "But you did," I said. He nodded slowly. "I was afraid," he whispered. "Afraid of what?" I asked. "Afraid of losing you," he said. I stared at him for a long moment. "You lost me the moment you chose lies over truth," I said. He lowered his head again. I thought the worst was over. But life had one more surprise waiting for us. Suddenly my phone rang. The sound broke the silence like glass. I looked at the screen. It was a number I did not recognize. For a moment I hesitated. Then I answered. "Hello," I said. A woman's voice replied. "Is this Racheal Frank?" "Yes," I said slowly. "My name is Margaret Hill," the woman said. My heart skipped a beat. I looked at Harold. His face turned pale when he heard the name. Margaret Hill was Alina's mother. I felt my chest tighten. "Yes," I said. "Why are you calling me?" There was a pause on the line. "Because Alina called me," Margaret said quietly. My hands trembled slightly. "What did she say?" I asked. Margaret took a deep breath. "She told me everything," she said. Silence fell around me. I looked at Harold again. He could not meet my eyes. Margaret continued speaking. "Racheal," she said, "I have carried this secret for too long. I thought silence would protect everyone. But now I see that silence only poisoned us slowly." Her words echoed in my mind. "Poisoned us slowly." Then she said something that shocked me even more. "There is something you do not know yet, Racheal." My heart began to race. "What is it?" I asked. Her voice trembled. "Pastor," she said. "Pastor Crowley." My chest tightened. "What about him?" I asked. Margaret hesitated for a moment, then spoke. "He has done this before." My breath caught in my throat. "Done what before?" I asked. "He has used his position to manipulate women," she said. "He has known secrets and kept them as weapons. And he has been involved in covering up things that should never have been hidden." My hands began to shake. "Do you have proof?" I asked. "Yes," she said. "And I am not the only one who knows." In that moment I understood something terrifying. The night in the church was not an accident. It was part of something bigger. After the call ended, I sat silently for a long time. Harold looked at me with fear in his eyes. "Racheal," he whispered, "what did she say?" I looked at him slowly. "She said your secret was not the only one in this church," I replied. His face turned even paler. That evening I made a decision that surprised everyone. I did not scream. I did not curse. I did not destroy anything. Instead I wrote letters. Letters to the church board. Letters to old members. Letters to people who had left the church silently years ago. I told them everything. Not with hatred. Not with revenge. But with truth. Within weeks, things began to change. People started speaking. Women started sharing stories. Men started confessing secrets they had buried for decades. The church that once looked holy began to reveal its cracks. Pastor Crowley was suspended from his position. Harold faced the consequences of his lies. And Alina began a journey to rebuild her identity. Slowly, painfully, but honestly. As for me, I did something no one expected. I did not leave Harold immediately. I did not stay either. I chose something different. Chose myself. I moved into a small apartment near a quiet park. I started attending support groups. I began speaking to other women who had been silenced by faith and fear. For the first time in my life, I was not just a wife. Not just a church member. Not just a quiet old woman. I was Racheal Frank. A woman who refused to let lies define her ending. Months later, Harold came to see me. He looked older. Smaller. "Racheal," he said softly, "do you hate me?" I looked at him calmly. "No," I said. He looked surprised. "Then what do you feel?" he asked. I thought for a moment. "Feel free," I said. Tears rolled down his cheeks. I walked past him and looked at the sky. For many years, I had believed that winning meant keeping peace at all costs. But I learned something different. Sometimes winning means breaking silence. Sometimes winning means walking away from lies. And sometimes the greatest victory is not revenge. It is truth spoken with courage. Today, when people see me, they still see a quiet old woman with silver hair and gentle eyes. But now I know who I am. I am not a victim. I am not a secret keeper. I am a survivor who turned pain into power. And that is how my story ends. If this story touched your heart, take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification button so you never miss another emotional and powerful story like this. Share your thoughts in the comments and tell me where you are watching from. Your voice matters just like mine did.